Welcome to Healthy Minds. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. Everyone is touched by psychiatric conditions, either themselves or a loved one. Do not suffer in silence. With help, there is hope. Today on Healthy Minds,
this is something that is definitely a problem on a large scale, and we've seen more and more evidence of that over the last few years, especially with the pandemic. But not to say that it wasn't a challenge before.
that's today on Healthy Minds. This program is brought to you in part by the American Psychiatric Association Foundation and the John and Polly Sparks Foundation. Welcome to Healthy Minds. I'm Dr. Jeff Borenstein. What should you do if you're experiencing addiction? Today, I speak with leading expert, Dr. Nii Addy, about the treatment for chemical dependency. Nii, thank you for joining me today, and thank you for the work that you've done and continue to do on this important topic.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
I want to jump right in and talk about addiction, chemical dependency, starting off with the scope of the issue. How prevalent is this? How large of a problem is this?
Yeah, this is something that is definitely a problem on a large scale, and we've seen more and more evidence of that over the last few years, especially with the pandemic. But not to say that it wasn't a challenge before. So often when we're thinking about chemical dependence, we're really talking about excessive use. And we know from the data that there are many individuals who use substances, but only a subset of those will actually develop what we typically refer to as substance use disorders. So it is still unfortunately prevalent in a lot of different spheres and a lot of different scopes, a lot of different populations. And we really want to make sure that we have an understanding of why this occurs and how we can help people actually move through that to get to a better place.
What would tell you as a clinician, a family member, or a person themselves, what would tell that person that this is a problem for them at this point in time?
Yeah, an excellent question, and something that I think about quite a bit, even myself being a scientist who does some of the studying, but then also working closely with our clinical colleagues in psychiatry. A lot of times what we do tell people is that when you notice a change in behavior that is very disruptive to someone's everyday life. So if they're no longer engaged in their normal activities, their normal responsibilities, and it really becomes disruptive, then that, of course, is a time of concern when you want to try and make that known to the person and make sure they are actually able to get help.
So really, if it's affecting the person's functioning, that's a clear-cut sign that help is needed for that individual, whether it be at work, socially at home, or with friends, or in school in younger people.
Exactly. And very similar to what we often say in terms of other mental health challenges as well, whether that be things like depression or anxiety, where people are wondering, is this something that is just a minor concern or something that's bigger, that's really disruptive to that person's life?
Bringing up depression and anxiety, I know a lot of your work has revolved around sort of the intersection of addiction, depression, anxiety. I'd like you to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for us, that's been something that's been really important, something we've paid attention to more and more. But to be honest, the way that we first thought about it was just in terms of the brain biology itself. So a lot of the work in the lab that we had been doing was thinking about aspects of relapse. So what's happening in the brain that makes it easy for people to slip into relapse and maybe not get to a place of less use or abstinence if that is the goal. As we were looking at some of these patterns in the brain, we noticed that the places that we were looking at specifically within the dopamine system, and also thinking about another neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, those same processes seem to be highly implicated in depression and anxiety. So it led us to think about, well, perhaps these are systems that are important in both. As we looked into things a little bit more, we also were aware of the literature showing that those who are navigating through substance use disorders have much more of a likelihood to also be navigating through things like depression and anxiety.
So an important take-home message for people is that you can't treat one without the other. If a person is having depression along with chemical dependency, you need to treat the whole person. You need to treat both of them, and vice versa.
Exactly. Very, very well said.
So as you've been looking at these really commonalities in terms of the brain, where does that lead us clinically in terms of treatment?
Excellent question as well. So clinically, we've also been thinking about how can we try and alleviate some of these symptoms simultaneously. So one of the things that we've been doing is to try and look at specific targets within the brain that can do exactly that.